This episode of Harvey Brownstone Interviews is brought to you by the Harvey Brownstone Talk Show Blend Coffee, available at hollywoodblends.com. Everyone's saying it's the best coffee they've ever tasted. Why not give it a try and see for yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Harvey Brownstone, and today's guest is a highly popular actress, author, and political commentator who first won our hearts as a child star in the role of Baby June, Natalie Wood's sister, in the classic 1962 movie Gypsy. She was also one of the schoolgirls in the classic Alfred Hitchcock film The Birds. And a few years later, she played one of the kids in the blended family parented by Henry Fonda and Lucille Ball in another classic movie, Yours, Mine, and Ours. As a child, she also appeared in Gunsmoke, The Twilight Zone, Daniel Boone, Lassie, Dr. Kildare, The Andy Griffith Show, My Three Sons, and dozens of other iconic TV shows. And as an adult, she's had an even more spectacular career. She's perhaps best known for her portrayal of the beautiful and conniving Katherine Wentworth on the super popular primetime drama series Dallas. And of course, we also remember her as the ambitious magazine writer Kate Simpson on Glitter. And she's also appeared in many other great TV shows and movies, including The Amazing Howard Hughes, The Initiation of Sarah, In Search of Historic Jesus, The Dream Merchants, Mothers and Daughters, Legend of the Spirit Dog, and LBJ, The Early Years, for which she won a Peabody Award. And get this, she's the only actress to have portrayed the legendary Vivien Leigh 3 times. First in 1975 in the classic film The Day of the Locust, then the following year in the feature film Gable and Lombard, and then in 1980 in the TV movie The Scarlett O'Hara War. Our guest has also been a highly sought-after political commentator as part of a series called Politichicks, and she's co-authored 2 best-selling books, What Women Really Want and Politichicks, A Clarion Call to Political Activism, which features a compelling collection of essays from many of the writers and activists featured on the Politichicks.com website. I am delighted to welcome the incomparable Morgan Brittany to our show. Miss Brittany, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Harvey. I'm tired just listening to that.
Well, you're tired doing it all?
I'm telling you, I look back on my career and for how long I've been in this business, as far back as I can remember, that's all I know. And so I think I'm looking back now on a lot of the memorabilia that I have saved throughout the years. And I think to myself, boy, I need to rest.
Not yet.
Oh.
Now, you started acting professionally at the age of 5 years old. Were you actually given a choice at that age about whether you wanted to be a performer?
No, I wasn't. It was circumstances. My mother was a singer she was a really wonderful singer in Atlanta, Georgia, and she worked at the Grand Ole Opry. And she found herself pregnant with me and had to move with her mother out to California. At that time, she didn't have any options because she was pregnant and she couldn't get a job. So my grandmother kind of supported all of us. I lived in a hotel downtown LA. That was not great. But I was born in 1951, and from the very beginning, the goal of my grandmother and my mother was to raise me to be a performer as soon as I was able. And from probably my earliest memory, which was, I guess, the age of 3 or 4, I was dancing, I was singing, I was performing, I was, all over the place. They put me in modeling schools, of course, dance classes every other day. And that's all I really remembered. So it wasn't my choice to do it. It was their choice. And in a sense, I look back on it and I realize it was a generational thing. My grandmother wanted to be an actress, but she lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee, did not have the opportunity. My mother, she tried to fulfill that through my mother, who did become, very popular as a country western singer. But because of circumstances, her career didn't go anywhere. So they finally made it with me. And it's a tough road. I talk to a lot of people about getting their children into the industry, and even though I've survived it and I've come through really well, there's so many people that have grown up in the business that didn't make it through or had a very rough time, you see a lot of alcoholism, a lot of suicides, a lot of drug addiction, and it's child stars that once they're no longer viable as child stars, it's over for them and they don't know what to do with their lives. And that's another story from me as to how I got through it. But it's a tough world,
How did you, as a little kid, handle all the rejections that must have happened, as they do with all actors?
I got used to it. It's difficult because they don't mince words in Hollywood. They don't care how old you are. You are basically a product to them. And in front of you, they will say, "Oh no, she's not attractive enough. Oh no, she's too short. Oh no, she's a little overweight. Oh no, we're gonna go with somebody else. Oh no, she's not good enough." And you hear that a lot in the industry because they that is the one thing about the industry you have to learn. They don't look at you really as a person. They look at you as a product that they can fit into their production and make money. So the rejection, I guess it was the most difficult when my childhood career ended. That was the hardest I ever had to deal with. But, I I just rolled with it. That's all I could do.
Well, before we get to that, I do want to ask you about some of your iconic roles as a child. I'm sure you know this, Morgan. You're the only other child star besides Billy Mooney to have appeared in 3 episodes of The Twilight Zone. For all
Yes.
those trivia buffs out there, they were called Nightmare as a Child, Valley of the Shadow, and my favorite, which was called Caesar and Me, co-starring Jackie Cooper, who
Right.
played a ventriloquist, and you end up bonding with the ventriloquist dummy for a life of crime. Can you share any memories of making that episode?
Oh, I have so many memories of that. And I actually I interact with a lot of people on X, and there's a lot of fans of Twilight Zone, and they'll ask me questions about, "Oh, I heard that the guy that did the voiceover on the dummy, he did all of that later in a sound booth somewhere." And I went, "Oh, no, 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 no. He was right there on set, off camera." And we actually ended up joking a lot because, it was a very serious show, but still we would end up joking. And I'm saying his mouth is not matching you. we we had a great time on that show. Jackie Cooper, having been a child star himself, was incredibly professional. I enjoyed so much working with him. And later on in my career, when I grew up, he directed me in Glitter in the pilot for Aaron Spelling. And so we worked together again, and it was great. I do remember vividly on Caesar and Me, which was, I guess it was 1964. I want to say it was toward the end of the series, with Rod Serling coming in and just sitting in his director's chair under one of those. It was a portrait. It really was. Harvey, he was sitting in a director's chair with an arc light backlighting him, and you could see his shadow with his cigarette and the smoke going up through the arc light. It was amazing. And he never really said anything. He just observed and he watched, and you knew you were doing okay if he didn't say anything.
Well, you did more
So,
than okay. You were pretty fantastic. Tell me, Morgan, what are your memories of working with Natalie Wood and Rosalind Russell in Gypsy?
oh, fantastic. That was one of the hardest roles up to that point in my career. Getting the role and doing the role that was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done up to that point in my life. And since I was baby June and I worked with Diane Pace, who was the younger Louise, my interactions with Natalie were in rehearsal because we'd all rehearse back on the back lot in a house on a rehearsal stage. And I remember at one point, Mervyn LeRoy, they had cast another girl as Dainty June, and Mervyn was not happy with her. And so he came to my mother one day and said, "We're going to try to make Suzanne into Dainty June. We're going to take her over to Ori Kelly right now to costume and see if he can't make her look 13 to play opposite Natalie." And I remember going through that, but I was only probably 9 when I did it, 9 years old. And it would have been a real stretch, but they did take me over there. They made me a teenage body to wear, high heel dance shoes, but it just did not work. And when they put me next to Natalie, I still looked too young. And so now, Natalie, she knew it. I knew it. And, they finally ended up and they got Ann Gillian, who was absolutely wonderful and the best pick they could ever get. But I remember Natalie as she was very insecure about playing Gypsy. She was, because she didn't think she had the body for a stripper. She didn't think she had a lot of insecurity with her. And she used to come to rehearsal with Warren Beatty, and they would sit there and watch me rehearse. They'd get their director's chairs and they'd sit down with, everybody, and I'd be doing my numbers and rehearsing, and she'd be smoking and watching me. And then when I was done and all the kids were done, we'd go out and she would rehearse, but she'd make everyone leave. I would look through the window and watch her rehearse. And I remember so well thinking, I hope I grow up to be like that. I hope I can be Natalie Wood. I really would love it. And
You did pretty well, I'll tell you. And what about Rosalind Russell? Was she nice to you?
Rosalind was such a pro. She was an amazing woman. And I learned a lot from Rosalind. In fact, from all the movie stars that I've worked with, I have picked up things that I've carried through the decades of my career. And something I will remember when I was little and I worked with someone, the professionalism, how to find your lighting, how to move your face in a certain direction that it's going to be best for you, how to enter a room. I mean, it was amazing. It was better than any acting class you could ever go to. And Rosalind was brilliant. I don't know if you've ever heard the story about Rosalind doing the song. It was the one, I think it was Some People. And she was in the house with the grandfather. And anyway, we're off camera because we were doing a scene in the kitchen, but we were all still on set. And Roz did the whole number, and she had to end it by putting her hat on and sticking a hat pin in her head to keep her hat on. She was in her number, and she was at the ending of that number, and you watch it on the screen when you watch it again. She pulls that hat on too far. And when she sticks that pin in, it goes in her head. She did not miss a beat. She threw the thing in her purse, walked out the door, and fell right on the ground. She finished that shot because she knew she would not be able to, that they had to get her to the hospital. To me, that was like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. But nobody really talks about that. But it was an incredible day. She was okay, but you can see it. If you watch it carefully, you'll see when it hits her head. And it's unbelievable. But I learned
Wow,
so much from her.
that's incredible. I actually have the DVD, and as soon as we finish, I am going to go and watch that because
You've got to watch it because you'll see it immediately, and you'll see the pin is at an angle, and you're going, oh my gosh, that's, yeah. But nobody really talks about that much. But Roz, loved working with her, just adored being with her every day that I could.
And what about Alfred Hitchcock in The Birds? Do you have any memories of his directing? I understand he didn't really like children that much.
No, but I look back on it. We were all scared to death of Hitch. We really were, because he was just so big and overwhelming. And when he'd stand up from his director's chair, we're all little, so it was very intimidating. But the story that I tell all the time, and probably everybody's heard it, is we were out doing the birthday party scene where the seagulls attack us, and it was freezing cold. Conditions were windy. They were gathering these birds off of an island with nets. They were not even trained birds or anything. And they would put fake beaks over theirs, and then they'd tie monofilament to their legs. And trainers would get up on a ladder and they would just pitch them at the kids when Hitch yelled action. And those birds would land wherever. And when they landed, they would just grab onto you because they didn't know what was going on. And you had to depend upon the trainers to reel them back in. And so you'd see these birds being pulled back in by monofilament. But I was a little concerned. So I gathered up my courage, and I saw that Hitch was next to the camera and he's getting ready to go. And I just gathered up my courage and went over to him and I said, "Mr. Hitchcock." And of course he's like, "Yes." And I said, "I'm really, really afraid of these birds. I don't know. I mean, what if they kill me?" And he looked down at me, and without missing a beat, he said, "Don't worry, my dear. It's your last scene in the picture anyway."
That's
And I just went, okay, and just turned around, walked over to the fence, and that was it.
That is priceless.
But
Now,
he was wonderful that way, because he thought that was funny. And it was funny now, but not then.
well, if you ever talk to Billy Mooney, he'll tell you his Hitchcock story, which is pretty horrible. He told it on our show, and I can't think of Alfred Hitchcock the same way after that.
Really?
Now, Morgan, in 1967, you appeared in a very special episode of The Andy Griffith Show. It was the first episode of season 8 called Opie's First Love, and your character was named Mary Alice. How did you like working with Andy Griffith and Ron Howard?
I really enjoyed it. It was a great opportunity for me to be on that show, and I loved the show. And of course, I had known Ronnie because he was a child actor. And so it was, it was a great thing to be able to do it. Andy was very giving. He was very nice to all the actors. Everybody. The great thing is that I walked in as a weekly hire, right? One episode, and here I am going to play Opie's girlfriend. But I basically, at that time in my life, I was going from show to show to show. I think that the show I did before that was Branded with Chuck Connors, where I was doing a Western. And then a week before that, I was doing Burke's Law with Gene Barry. So it was just another day at work, basically. You just get a new script and you go, okay, you're going to play Opie's girlfriend and this. And you show up to set and everybody expects you to know your job and you just jump in. So that was kind of the way it was. I never really realized how popular the Andy Griffith Show was. With no social media and really nothing to judge it by except for Nielsen ratings, I guess, back then. I never realized it until now. I mean, for maybe the years that I've been doing autographs for people and doing events and Mayberry Days, and I mean, it's a worldwide phenomenon. I knew it was like shows like My Three Sons, shows like, Andy Griffith's show, those shows, I guess it was, what else was there? There was Father Knows Best back in the day. They were heartwarming shows, and they had a great message to send. Whether or not people in their own lives were having difficulties or they were having money problems, whatever it was, they could turn on the Andy Griffith Show or My Three Sons and watch that and feel better about themselves just by watching that show. We miss that so much these days in the media. That's long gone. Everything I watch is so dark. I mean, I even look back to the days of the 70s, and you had the Brady Bunch, which was a takeoff of Yours, Mine, and Ours. You had Little House on the Prairie. You had Highway to Heaven. I mean, there were amazing shows that people could escape to. Now it's just I just feel a different mindset in Hollywood, or it's not the same. I was very fortunate to be able to do the things I did back in the day because it was a different dynamic.
Oh, it sure was. And you did appear in many iconic shows. Now, you mentioned Yours, Mine, and Ours.
Mhm.
That's one of my all-time favorite Lucille Ball movies, co-starring Henry Fonda. What was it like working with those two great legends?
Unbelievable. Now, I had a whole different idea of who Lucy was before I met her. And I thought she was Lucy from the Lucy Show. And she was not. Lucy was a no-nonsense professional woman on the hard side. She was extremely, no, I guess you would call it bossy, but in a way that she walked on set. She knew everybody's job. She knew if you were prepared or if you were not. And working with 18 kids, it tried her patience a lot, but she treated every kid, no matter what their age, as though they were adults. And you were expected to perform. And you didn't mess up, because if you did, she gave you a dressing down, no matter what age you were. But Lucy was also a great teacher. And I learned so much comedy from her and how to do certain things. And I think a lot of the other kids did as well, because if you remember, Tim Matheson was in that show, and gosh, I'm trying to think, Ben Murphy was a boyfriend in that show, but we had we had wonderful people, Mitch Vogel back then, Eric Shea, a lot of really, really talented kids. And Henry gave me something that really got me through some tough times in my life after that. Henry Fonda was extremely quiet. He sat in his director's chair and actually he taught me how to needlepoint, because he would do needlepoint with his glasses down on his nose. And he taught me how to do that. And we'd have conversations on set in between shots. And I was 16 at the time. I think I had just turned 16. And I was not getting a lot of work. I was becoming one of the kids that is not a cute little kid anymore, but also not an 18-year-old who's able to work in, adult situations. So I was not getting a lot of work, and I was really fortunate to get Yours, Mine, and Ours, because Lucy really loved my screen test. But Henry, I was kind of venting one day, and I said to him, I don't know. I said, I love working in this business. I love it, but it's so hard now. And it's so tough for me to make a transition, and I get so discouraged that I just want to give up. And he said, "Well, do you really want to do this?" And I said, I don't know. I think I do. And he said, "Well, if you do," he said, I'll tell you this, do not ever give up. Always stay in the game, because one day that door is going to open for you, but you have to stay in the game."
And you took that advice.
And I took that advice, and I never forgot it, because things got really bad for me after Yours, Mine, and Ours. They really did. Agents dropped me, everything, because I was no longer, they didn't know where to put me.
Well,
It
there
was,
were a few years where you were a model, including 2 years in Japan. And of course, we all remember you as the ultra bright toothpaste girl in those
right.
commercials. So, what was your strategy, Morgan, for reinventing yourself as an adult actress?
That was when I became another person. And that was when I threw my resume out. I threw my past career out. I never mentioned it. I changed my name. And I moved to New York City. Now, one thing that I did do in between that transition, when I turned 18 years old, I went and did a show with Gene Kelly in Las Vegas, as a dancer. And I was 18. I was not even legal to sit in a casino. They'd make me go through the back door to get to the show. But working with Gene Kelly, that was one of the last things I did at the International Hotel. And then I took off for New York City, and I changed my name, and I changed my image, and I changed my life. But that only through the grace of God happened, because I was at a crossroads, and I did not know what to do.
Well, this may be a bit of a weird question, but
Mhm,
I'm just wondering, once you became an adult actress with the
mhm.
name Morgan Brittany,
Right.
did you ever encounter actors and people in the business who had worked with you as a child but didn't recognize you?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. They would, it was funny, because they would think they knew me, but they'd go, "No, you remind me of somebody." And I would never say anything. It would be one of those things that would be, it's, it's really kind of odd, because that happened with Bob Hope. Bob Hope worked with me when I was 18. And years later, he put me on his specials, his Bob Hope specials, when I was on Dallas. And never once did it cross his mind that he knew me when I was 18 years old. Never once.
Well, I just think it's a remarkable thing that you did. I think it must have been very hard on you to simply dismiss that incredible career as a child star and reinvent yourself totally, including a new name. You deserve all the credit in the world. The emotional maturity that you had at that young age in an industry that's brutal cannot be overestimated. And I'm just pleased I get to tell you that I think what you did was quite astonishing.
Well, it was actually no choice. I was not trained to do anything else. I wasn't. I kind of had a hit and miss school. I went to public school sometime, but I was on set most of the time. The teaching on the set is not so great, because you come in for 20 minutes, and then they call you to do a scene, and then you come back and you go, "Was I doing math?" Wait. It's very hard. And I looked at what I wanted to be, and I really thought, if I stop this business, I guess I could be a journalist, I could be a commentator, I could go into something else. But somehow life has a plan for you, because every time I tried to stray from this career, I was dragged back into it by either somebody who would say, you know, like a kid in college. I went to college for all of about maybe 6 months. And he was in the photojournalism department, and he said, hey, would you do me a favor? I need a model for my portfolio. And if you would do that for me, that would be awesome. I did the portfolio for him, which was a fashion thing. He took it around to people to get work. And then he came back to me and he said, well, they never said anything about my pictures except who's the girl. And I said, what? And he goes, I'm telling you, you really need to try modeling or something, because I mean, these people are interested in you. And so there you have it. Every time I tried to go in a different direction, took me back.
That's destiny. Now, you played Howard Hughes' first wife, Ella, in the movie The Amazing Howard Hughes. And of course, you
Yes.
played Scarlett O'Hara more than once.
Yes.
How did you prepare for a role when you were playing a real person?
Well, it's interesting because in the Amazing Howard Hughes, I didn't know anything about Ella Rice Hughes. And I had to do research on her and find out who she was and what she was like and what her relationship was with Howard. And it takes a lot of really just turning yourself into that person. It wasn't so easy with her. It wasn't really that easy with Alice Glass in Lyndon Johnson, the LBJ, the early years. That was tough because she was his mistress. And they made me a blonde, strawberry blonde, and I did all of this, you know, body image stuff. They padded everything because she was a completely physically different than me. But having looked at it, I will grab something from their story, their biographies, or whatever story is written about them, and I will pull that out. And that's what I bring to the role. Vivien Leigh was easy. Vivien Leigh was Gone with the Wind was the first movie I ever saw in my life. And I felt a connection to her at a very young age. And actually in the 70s, when I changed my name and became a different person, everybody that was working, it was kind of a grunge era, if you remember, like around the 74, 73. And glamour was out. Glamour was like, no, they're not going to hire you. They're going to do earthy people. I decided to be different. So I let my hair grow long. I changed my name. I got it from a Southern book called Flood Tide by Frank Yerby. And I picked my name out of that book. And I said, who do I look like? And then I figured out that I had a Vivien Leigh type image. And sure enough, I started that. That's when I got Day of the Locust. That's when I got Gable and Lombard. All of a sudden, the press picked up on it because it was a hook. Amazing. And then
Well, I've heard you say that your appearance as Vivien Leigh in the Scarlett O'Hara War was the major turning point in your career. I personally remember seeing your face on the cover of TV Guide, many other magazines.
Right.
How important was that role in getting you seen by the producers of Dallas?
It was unbelievably. Now, bear in mind, I had already done big movies of the week. I did Initiation of Sarah. I had done Delta County, USA. I'd done a whole lot of movies of the week. I was making a reputation as an actress. ABC, CBS, NBC. My career was going in one direction. So I had William Morris as an agent. And when this came across, they got a call and they said, we want Morgan to do a cameo at the end of David Wolper's miniseries, Scarlett O'Hara War, as Vivien Leigh. And my agent called me and said, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. This is a small little cameo at the end of the movie. And, you know, I don't know. It's just not a good career move for you. Well, I said to them, I want to do it. I said, do you understand what that means? It's called the Scarlett O'Hara War. Everybody's going to wait to see who Scarlett is at the end of that movie. And then he's arguing with me going, there's no money in it. There's no money in it. They don't want to pay much. I said, I don't care. I said, the only thing I want is I want a separate card credit at the end at the end of the credits right there, single card that says, and introducing Morgan Brittany as Vivien Leigh. That's all I want. I don't care if they don't pay me. They argued with me. I said, don't argue with me. I want to do it. So I ended up doing it. When CBS, or it was NBC, I think, NBC got the photographs, their publicity department said, put her on the covers of every regional TV guide, Morgan Brittany as Vivien Leigh. That did it. That did it. Now, all of a sudden, people were saying, that's the ultra bright girl. Oh my gosh, now we know her name. Everything changed. Everything changed. When Dallas came along, they knew, wow, there's buzz about this girl. Bring her in, right? It's amazing what things will do. And sometimes you have to fight people when you know inside instinctively, because you've been in the business your entire life, you know what works, right?
That's the amazing thing, that you knew more than your own managers. It's actually quite fascinating. Now, I have to stop you. You mentioned the initiation of Sarah with my friend Morgan Fairchild, who was on our show not too long ago. That was a fabulous movie. Did you have a lot of fun making that one?
Yes, we had a ball. We had so much fun in that. And actually, that's the first time Morgan and I were together in New York City. And the only way I knew her was because they said, oh, there's another Morgan, but she's blonde and she does soap operas and stuff. And I went, wow, that's great. We never really crossed paths in New York. But when we did Sarah, we became friends and we ended up doing the Dream Merchants together too. And we stayed friends after that. So it's, she's a wonderful person. I just respect her so much for everything she's done, because she's really, really good at what she does.
And so intelligent. She so defies the image that people think they have of her.
Yes.
Now, that dress behind you, before we talk about Dallas, that dress behind you, Morgan, what's the story behind the dress?
Well, there's a lot of interest in Gone with the Wind still these days. And since most everybody, I mean, I guess now everybody's gone from the original movie. There were a few people left when I first started doing events, but they would invite me, like these big events in Georgia would invite me to come down and, sign autographs because I had played Vivien. And so I met a lot of people. I was doing it for the longest time, meeting, Anne Edwards, who wrote the book on Vivien Leigh, she was there. Anne Rutherford was one of the sisters in Gone with the Wind. She was at these events. But most of these people, Bonnie Blue, Carrie, I can't remember her last name, but the little girl from Gone with the Wind, she would go to these events. So I met so many people, and I met a man not too many years ago, and we became friends. He's a wonderful designer, fashion designer. He creates amazing product. And he said, what's your favorite outfit in Gone with the Wind? And I said, oh my gosh, there's so many, but I really love the red robe she wears when she comes down the stairs, and it's got the long train in the back. And he called me on my birthday and he said, send me your measurements. I'm making you the gown for your birthday. And he made it for me, sent it to me. I've got it upstairs, and along with I have so many things from Vivien Leigh. I have her fur coat from her daughter that was sold at auction. And I am so connected to her. And her daughter's name was Suzanne. And that was my name when I was a kid. So it's very, very crazy. But that's how I got the dress. And I have some wonderful memorabilia from Gone with the Wind, and it's amazing. Oh, one funny story for you. I did it when I met my husband. I met my husband on a show called The Dukes of Hazzard. They called me in to do an episode as Daisy's cousin. I had a scene in a house, and it was supposed to be a haunted house. And I'm on set, and this is Warner Brothers. And I walked on, and we're blocking. And I opened the door, and to my right, my eye catches this crystal light and this crystal. And I looked at it, and I went to the prop guy. I go, "Do you know what this is?" And he went, "No, I got it out of the prop department." I said, "This is Belle Watling's lamp from Gone with the Wind." And he went, "What?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "How would you know that?" I said, "Trust me, I know that. This is a valuable piece. Do not let anything happen to this." And he goes, "Well, I don't know where they got it. I guess they bought it at auction somewhere, maybe the MGM auction or something." Can you believe that?
That's
And that,
unbelievable.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
here I am walking in to do my scene, and Gone with the Wind is over here, right?
And no one else knew but you, of course.
No, nobody
No.
else knew. Everybody thought I was crazy.
Now, of course, I have to ask you about Dallas. Everyone loved you as the scheming Katherine Wentworth. For the benefit of our viewers, Katherine was the daughter of Rebecca and the half sister of Cliff and Pamela Barnes. She falls madly in love with her brother in law, Bobby Ewing. But
Right.
what a lot of people may not know, Morgan, is that you did something unheard of at your audition. You walked out and you still got the job. How did that happen?
I did. I had just gotten married to Jack, and we didn't even have time for a honeymoon. We got back to California, and my agent called me and said, "Hey, they're looking for a new character on Dallas." And I said, "Dallas, Dallas, Dallas. I think I know what that is." And he said, "Yeah, it's like a nighttime soap opera thing. They're looking for a sister for Pam, but they don't know what they want. They really don't know what they want. So they're taking names of people that they'd like to see. They want to see you, but they're seeing a lot of people. Can you go to MGM and, read a couple of sides?" And I went, "Oh, I just got married. I don't want to schlep over to MGM and do a cattle call." But I did. But I did. And I got over there. I was not in a great mood. I was not in a great frame of mind. But I got myself all done up, right? Big hair, big boots, Western shirt. I was ready to go, right? So I was all ready to go. I walked into one of the buildings over at MGM. Girls everywhere, blondes, brunettes, young, old, 16, 25, what? And I sat there and I thought, what am I doing here? But I sat down, they handed me two sides, and I waited and I waited and I waited. And it went on for like 2 hours of interviewing people in and out. Finally, they got to me. Back in those days, there was no videotape. So everybody was in the room. There were 10 people in the room. Lenny Katzman, David Jacobs, the casting lady, everybody, network people. I'm sitting in a chair. They're all looking at me. And Lenny goes, "Okay, let's run it." And we did. We ran it. And I had an edge to me. Do you know what I mean? Like the script wasn't written that way, but I played it because I was annoyed that day. And I played it that way. And so Lenny goes, "Okay, well, that was really good. I'd really like to try it another way." And I said, "You know what? I really don't have time." I said, I really don't have time. I gotta go." And I stood up and walked out the door. And when I got out to the main lot, I went, "What did I just do? I've never done that. I've never walked out on an audition. Oh my God, my agent's gonna kill me." So I got on the payphone and I went, "Listen, you're gonna get a call from the producers that I was really, really rude." And he goes, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I was just not in the mood. And so I kind of left before they wanted me to leave. And he goes, well, they're seeing a lot of people anyway, so, don't sweat it. And I said, oh, okay. Well, a few days later, they must have looked at other people, and he gets a call and he said, there's something about that girl. Why would she walk out on the #1 show in Hollywood? It was one of those things. It was exactly what they were looking for Katherine Wentworth. When you walk in there. So they wrote it that way.
It's just incredible. And the thing about Dallas, the scripts on Dallas required you to deliver some very intense performances involving psychotic behavior and 2 murder attempts. How did you feel about the direction they took your character?
I talked to the writers about that because I really didn't know where she was going, but she was getting crazier and crazier and crazier. They said, see, I was only scheduled to do 7 episodes. That's all I was contracted for. I was going to come in and go out. And after I left, after the 7 episodes, I went off to do another movie. And then Lenny Katzman calls my agent and says, hey, we want to offer her a contract part. And we're going to make her a regular on the show. Because the audience reaction is, who is that girl? Wait, where did she go? Because I evidently went back to New York or something. Where did she go? So they decided they were going to write a whole Bible about Bobby and Pam and this, and they got very excited about, oh my gosh, this is going to be great. So that's how that happened.
So how did you feel about all of season 9 having been a dream?
Oh, I was gobsmacked when I got the phone call. I mean, when I did the death scene for Bobby, when I hit him with the car, I was 7 months pregnant. So I knew I was leaving the show. And I was, raising a baby. And then I get this call that says, Lenny calls me one day and he says, hey, Morgan, it's Lenny. And I went, Lenny, hey, long time no hear from. And he goes, yeah, listen, I got a question for you. And I said, okay. He goes, how would you feel about coming back to the show? And I said, Lenny, I'm dead. Don't you remember? You've already done another year without me. And he said, no, maybe not. I said, what? And he goes, no, Patrick wants to come back. And the only way we can bring him back is we have to make it that it never happened. It was a dream. And you're coming back too. And I sat there on the phone. I said, Lenny, how are you gonna do that and convince the public that all of that, forget about all that. Forget about the season where, he wasn't around. And he goes, no, it'll be fine. He said, they do it on soap operas all the time. And I said, well, if you need me, yeah, I can come back. I said, I probably can't do a lot of episodes because I have a child. And he said, no, it'll be, you'll be causing trouble, but we won't do too much. We'll have you do, and you'll get really crazy. And then, you'll probably, I don't know. He says, I don't know what we're going to do with you. So that's how that happened. But I was very concerned at one point because Katherine seemed to be winning the war. She seemed to be getting Bobby away from Pam, and evil seemed to be winning. And I was a little bit concerned because I said to the writer, I go, is she going to win this? I mean, is she going to, are there any consequences for this? And he went, oh yeah. There are. There's going to be consequences for you. And he said, you're going to suffer. And I went, great. That's awesome, because I don't want people to think that this kind of behavior, gets you what you want. And he goes, no. We're going to make it really, really tough for you. And I said, okay. And he says, I just want you to be as psychotic. He said, I really want you to turn like this is an obsession that has overtaken you completely. And I did my studying, and I studied all about Eve Harrington, and I used that And I later told Ann Baxter that on the set of Hotel. I said, you know who I made Katherine Wentworth? I said, she was Eve Harrington. And Anne just went, really? That's so amazing. I said, oh, you were wonderful.
Yeah, that actually gives me new insight into that character that you were channeling Eve Harrington
Eve Harrington,
and
absolutely.
Baxter in All About Lee. Tell me, do you know why they didn't bring Katherine back when they did the 2012 sequel to Dallas?
I have my suspicions, which should probably go unsaid, but I do know that they did call my agent and ask about my availability and say, we're doing another Dallas, and we're thinking about bringing Katherine back to do a deal or whatever with Cliff. And then my agent said, oh, that would be great. Well, about a week later, they got another phone call and said, we're going to go in a different direction. We've kind of been doing social media things, and we're just going to go in a different direction. So I have my suspicions about why. They didn't bring Susan Howard back either, if you remember. So I don't know. I mean, I can't prove anything, but you never know. You never know why.
It sounds like egos and politics to me, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
And after finishing your work on Dallas, Morgan, was it difficult for you to get away from being typecast as the Katherine character?
yeah, I ended up playing villains in most everything I did. I worked on Melrose Place. Aaron brought me back. I tried to break away from it when I did Glitter. And Glitter was, Kate Simpson was such a nice girl and she was so great. But the public was they were so entrenched in me being Katherine. They couldn't get past it because a lot of fans would say, it's your eyes. The minute we see your eyes, we know what's behind that. And so it was difficult. A Melrose Place, I played the same character, bad guy, terrible, evil.
Well, in 1989, you co-starred with David Carradine in a very popular cult film called Sundown: The Vampire in Retreat.
Oh, yes.
Are you surprised that the movie has become such a huge underground cult favorite?
Yeah, yes. I'm so amazed. I mean, that movie was, how should I put this? It was kind of like a train wreck the whole time. So I'm really shocked. I mean, really shocked. We had an amazing cast too. I mean, we had actors in there from the old days that were just brilliant, but some of them had issues. And it was very hard. I mean, that was when I walked away from that film, I went, okay, this is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. It's one of those films that actors always go, what's the one film that you just go, okay, take it off my resume? That was the one, but look at it. People love it.
People love it. We had David Carradine's ex-wife, Marina Anderson, on our show a few weeks ago to promote her book about him. And I have to say, the picture she painted of him in her book is that he was beyond eccentric, extremely difficult to live with. What did you find him like to work with?
Oh, same thing. We would sit for hours because he wouldn't come out of his trailer. We were all ready to go. We're all ready to shoot. It's, I mean, everybody was there. Big scenes, horses, cowboys, guns, the whole thing. And the poor AD that had to go knock on the door, go, Mr. Carradine, we're ready for you. Get away from my door. It was like, oh, golly, what do I do? Then you go back again and you go, if you don't get away from my door, I'm gonna come out there, and do so. I mean, and we just all kind of went, okay, great. Oh yeah, it was, and the director was having an affair with the leading lady. They were having an affair and they were having a fight all the time. They were always, and she'd go hide under the trailers so he couldn't find her. I mean, I'm serious. this was, people should have been filming the behind the scenes because it was absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Well, now, Morgan, one of the reasons I very much wanted to have you on our show is to tell you that a few years ago we had Candy Spelling on the show, and
Yes.
she's become a dear friend. She told me that her late husband, Aaron Spelling, loved you so much from the time you were 10 years old that he was always looking for projects for you. I'm sure you knew that, but I just wanted to tell you what she told me. How did that make you feel?
Oh, that makes me feel so wonderful because when I first worked with Aaron, it was on Burke's Law, the original Burke's Law. And he never forgot me. He would call me in for things. He did. He found me glitter. And I know that I think somebody had called. I was living in Japan when they were starting Charlie's Angels. And I had a contract with the Japanese cosmetic company. So I couldn't come back to the States, but there was talk, that maybe I would be right for that. But Aaron was just an amazing man. I mean, so gentle, so nice, so sweet, classy. He treated everybody on his shows like they were the biggest stars in the world. And that's why they all came to do his shows, because you'd get silver services and you'd get roses in your trailer and you'd have Nolan Miller coming down and making you gowns and the best makeup in the world, the best lighting in the world. I mean, he was the end of an era. He really was, because there's no one like that these days.
Now, Morgan, from what I can see on IMDb, you stopped acting in 2007. Why?
Well, I was not there. You know what? I've always thought of my career, everything that I've done. I mean, minus the vampire movie, but I mean, everything I've done has been, I'm proud of it. I'm proud to talk about it. I'm proud to have people say, oh my gosh, you were in that. You worked with that person. This is so wonderful. I have a resume that I can look back on and say, I really did a good body of work. And so the things I was getting offered after 2007 were not something that I would want to see at the end of my resume. I don't want to see a slasher movie where I'm a crazy mom who kills high school students or what. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do something that's going to go against my value system, that's going to promote another value system that I don't agree with. And I was getting offered a lot of that stuff. I I just didn't find anything that really made me excited. Not that there isn't somebody out there that has something that I would like to do. I just have not found it. And I find so much more, actually. I mean, the Hollywood time was amazing. Hollywood, everything I did, everything that I experienced, the good and the bad, was amazing, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But I have such a great life now. I have grandchildren, I have children, I have people I have met across this country that are just, they're friends, they're people, they're just normal, everyday people, farmers and firemen and airline pilots and women that work at American Airlines. And I mean, I can go places and I can just live in reality with real people. Because when you've spent 50 years of your life living in a fantasy land, you tend to believe it after a while and not understand that the real world, family, friends, love, charity, all of that is so much more, so much more.
Well, the thing that really, really impresses me about you in a big way, I mean, I did my research about you. I know, for example, you came very close to being cast in the 1980 movie Somewhere in Time. You
Yes.
didn't get the role only because Jane Seymour had an English accent and you didn't. You dealt with disappointments like that. You've talked about how in this business, you're a product.
Mm-hmm.
They make decisions about you based on whether you are marketable or commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really love about you is that somehow you figured that out as a kid. You learned how to maintain your self esteem, your sense of equilibrium. You didn't let the business destroy you. I so commend you for that, Morgan.
Oh, thank you. I do appreciate that. It's sometimes it's really hard, and sometimes it's really hard to make the decisions. And that's why I told you earlier in the show, I when I do reach a crossroads, I put that decision in the hands of God and I say, lead me the right way. And it's never failed me, never once failed me. And I've had people just tell me, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. This is a career move. This is going to propel you. And I go, no, I don't feel right about it. I don't feel right about it. You know? So I do put a lot of, I mean, the way I am, I think it's because I do have such a core belief. And I believe that I want to do the right thing because I want my kids to do the right thing. I want my grandkids to do the right thing. It's all about your character. And I've seen so many tragic endings to people, so many people that I admire and I just loved, and I see them and they're unhappy and they're lonely and they're depressed and just they gave it all up. They gave everything up for that shiny star, you know? And that shiny star doesn't remember who you are. And producers and directors and writers and studios, they don't care. They don't care.
Well, I'll tell you who cares. You're public. You have
Yes.
been part of some of the most spectacular projects. You've delivered some great magical performances. How about sitting down and writing a memoir?
I'm actually in the process of doing that. I'm not going to write a normal memoir. I'm writing sound bites from a Hollywood life. And it's basically a lot of like what we talked about, but thousands more. It's like the stories, but I want to do it. Essays, short essays that will get you go, oh, that's such a cool little story. Twilight Zone, like you said, the birds. I mean, there are actors and people and situations and auditions and New York and being thrown out of modeling agencies. You'll never make it. There's no chance for you. I mean, the stories are endless, but I think each little one is something people can learn something from. Like Gypsy was the hardest audition I've ever had in my life. I was already cast as Baby June. I was wardrobed. I was in rehearsal. And a casting woman from Warner Brothers brought a little girl in to Mervyn LeRoy during my rehearsal. And they took me to a off, like out of the way little tent to sit with my mother while they auditioned her for my part
That you already had.
that I already had. And I heard the casting woman say, oh, you've got to see this. This is your Baby June. This is the one you want. And Mervyn listened to her sing, and he said, I heard him say, because my heart was pounding in my chest. And I said to my mother, have I got the job or have I not got the job? Do I have it? Am I losing it? And she said, I don't know. And I heard Mervyn say, I have my Baby June. Do not send me anyone else. And they left.
What a relief.
You talk about being 8 or 9 years old and go and hearing that. The rest of your life, you think, okay, I could lose this at any minute, right? So that's what child actors go through. But you know what? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it did.
I think that book that you have inside you is going to be phenomenal. You have lived through an era, really going all the way back to the golden age of Hollywood,
Oh, yeah.
that no one else has anymore. And I just believe that the lessons that you've learned, especially if you include a chapter for all those stage parents out there, would be incredibly helpful. I'm just going to ask you to promise me that you'll come back on our show when the book comes out.
Oh, I would love to. I really, really would love to. It would be my honor because you're wonderful. You ask such amazing questions that a lot of people don't ask.
Well,
And it's
Miss
great.
Morgan Brittany, it has been such a pleasure meeting you and having this opportunity to celebrate your amazing life and career. It was easy to ask you all those questions because I've followed your work from the time we were both kids. I can't believe you have a daughter almost 40. That's just unbelievable.
I can't either.
Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And so please include a chapter in the book on beauty tips.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much, genetic and living a pretty clean life. No drugs, no, nothing like that. So,
well, it's just been such a thrill having you on the show. Thank you for all the great performances. Thank you so much for sharing your heart with all of us. And thank you so much for taking the time to appear on our show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And you've talked to some absolute, icons. And just your whole show is just amazing with so much information. So thank you. I'm very honored to be part of it.
Well, the honor was all mine. Thank you. Our guest has been the wonderful Morgan Brittany. My name is Harvey Brownstone. Thank you all for joining us. See you next time. Thank you to my producer, Steve Silver, my managers, Rick Marcelli and Robin Bragg Marcelli at the Marcelli Company in Hollywood, my director of programming, Robert Monaghan, my PR directors, Eileen Shapiro and Jimmy Starr, and my entire team at the XPTV1 network in the UK.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out all the great interviews on the Harvey Brownstone Interviews YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos are posted.